Conflicting messages. The Safe Streets program originally said they were mediating gun-related conflicts at the Brooklyn Day event. Now another group says that wasn't the case. New today, we question the mayor about these conflicting messages. Then, juvenile crimes accountability. We talk to attorneys statewide about the laws they say need to be changed to ensure justice is served.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 4.
This was an incident where our officers did an outstanding job of taking an armed, dangerous criminal off the streets.
We are following breaking news tonight. New security and body cam video showing a deadly police shooting. This is video from an incident late last month just blocks from Patterson Park. The footage seems to show a suspect running from police and firing at officers before he was shot and killed. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mary Bubala.
I'm Kai Jackson. Fox 45 News is taking a closer look at the video tonight and breaking down the police department's response. Vincent Hill joins us live now with details. Vincent?
Yeah, Kai and Mary, it happened back on June 29th. Police say they were trying to serve a warrant on 40-year-old Daryl Gamble. Now, take a look at this video. So Gamble sped away from police through a busy residential neighborhood, eventually crashing his car and getting out on foot. Seconds later, Gamble can be seen firing a .40 caliber handgun at police, those officers returning fire. Gamble then discards the handgun and pulls out what police describe as an AK-47 style rifle. He takes cover behind a parked car and begins to fire again. Gamble is then struck several times by officers who are approaching from the other end of Milton Avenue. When it was all said and done, almost 100 rounds were fired.
We know there were probably around 40 rounds fired. We have not dissected that down yet. As for the individual, we found, so far, I believe we found 33 casings from his weapon. But again, we're still going through the process of determining the exact amount.
Now, 5 officers fired in total. Police say Gamble also had a stolen .357 handgun inside that bag, which was fully loaded, and a shotgun inside his car. They say Gamble was wanted on drugs and weapons charges. Kai.
Vincent, I want to make it very clear we are not making a judgment here about police and what they did, so I'm going to ask you a question. You've been a police officer. Based on your experience and the details of this case, in your experience, do you believe it was warranted for 5 officers to discharge their weapons?
Okay, a lot of factors go into that, but you have to think of the #1 job of police, protection, right? So you have a guy who's armed with at least 4 guns. What happens if he gets away? Could there be a hostage situation? Could he go kill someone else? So police had to take all that into consideration. And police are actually trained to shoot to eliminate the threat, which is something Acting Commissioner Richard Worley addressed this afternoon. For now, we're live in the control room. Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
All right, Vincent, thank you for that perspective. For the full body cam footage and more details on the police shooting, head to foxbaltimore.com.
Also breaking tonight, a man was killed at a construction accident along Falls Road this afternoon. Police say it happened around 2 o'clock. A man was apparently run over by a construction vehicle working on road repairs. The accident is under investigation.
Are y'all not done? Are y'all not fed up? Y'all want to keep going to these vigils? Y'all want to keep seeing these babies in these caskets? I don't.
Well, neighbors calling for change in West Baltimore's Madison Park neighborhood last night. Family and friends gathering to remember 20-year-old Kylis Fagbemi, one of 2 people killed in the Brooklyn mass shooting.
Kylis Fagbemi and 18-year-old Aaliyah Gonzalez lost their lives at the Brooklyn Day block party. 28 others were hurt. Now, tonight, a week and a half later, police still haven't charged anyone with the shooting or named any suspects. There are more questions about what was happening at that party and the involvement of Safe Streets workers.
The mayor's team and a nonprofit running the Safe Streets site in Brooklyn sending out contradicting statements about the mediations done by workers that night. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost joins us now with the very latest on this. Mackenzie?
Well, Mary and Kai, the story seems to be changing surrounding the mediations that were completed by the Safe Streets workers before that mass shooting took place in Brooklyn. Yesterday, Monzi sent us a statement that came from Catholic Charities, which is the nonprofit running this Safe Streets location in Brooklyn. That statement says that the mediations completed did not involve anyone with weapons. That's not exactly what Monzi told us last week. Now, earlier today, we tried to ask Mayor Brandon Scott some questions about this conflicting messaging after the Board of Estimates meeting, but the mayor left before taking our questions. I immediately followed up, sent his office the questions we would have asked him, and I did just get a response, but it didn't come from the mayor. Instead, a response came from Monzi saying that the statement from Catholic Charities is really just clarifying exactly what happened during those mediations. But this evolving storyline and more questions being raised really underscores the importance of the city council hearing that's set to take place tomorrow night. Councilman Mark Conway says that he plans to demand answers not only from Monzi, but the Baltimore Police Department as well as the Housing Department to figure out how the city was left so unprepared for this event. Kai?
Yeah, and so, Mackenzie, maybe tomorrow at that council meeting we'll get some of those answers that you've been trying to get. In the meantime, Mackenzie, what about this Safe Streets policy for communicating potential threats? The police and Safe Streets have talked about, you know, we don't want to compromise our integrity. That's fine, but there's a public safety component that you figure just has to be met.
Sure, and that's something that we have been asking Monzi for several days now, an update on that policy. We were told that it was under review, but the agency is simply refusing to give us any sort of answers or insight into how that review process is taking place. We don't know when the policy will be changed, how it will be implemented, or what that means for Safe Streets workers moving forward. Perhaps we could get some insight during the City Council hearing tomorrow night. It's set to take place at 5 o'clock at City Hall, and we'll be there and let you know what happens. We're live in the newsroom. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. Meanwhile, the 17-year-old arrested in connection with the shooting is reigniting concerns about Maryland's juvenile justice laws. Fox 45 News has heard complaints about the laws from leaders across the state now for months, and that includes the Prince George's County Executive and Police Chief, as well as the Harford County Sheriff, and most recently, Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates. They say the laws leave police and prosecutors' hands tied.
To be honest, I think it's one of the worst pieces of legislation I've ever read, because what it has done is taken the process of holding juveniles accountable away from prosecutors.
Those protections have given way to a protection of some people who have committed very heinous crimes, which, yes, that does hamper what we are doing now.
It's becoming more and more difficult to hold juveniles accountable.
Basically, a lot of things that unfortunately young people find themselves getting involved in, police can no longer take action.
Well, several top prosecutors across the state of Maryland are speaking out, saying their hands are tied when it comes to holding juveniles accountable because of new laws. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live in Towson with what they're saying. Maxine?
Well, Kai, it's two laws on the books that many states' attorneys across Maryland are taking issue with. We reached out to all 24 of them, sending them the following questions, asking, do you believe the Maryland General Assembly has made it difficult for your office to hold juveniles accountable? And do you support the Juvenile Justice Reform Act of 2022 and the Child Interrogation Protection Act? Of those 24 states' attorneys, 9 of them answered our questions, and all of them agreed the General Assembly has made it more difficult to hold juveniles accountable, including Baltimore County State's Attorney Scott Schellenberger.
They know that, you know, nothing's really going to happen to them if they keep their crime in a certain limit of types of crimes. So if they're, 10 to 13 and they don't commit a crime of violence, they're not going to get anything. It's going to be very little, if anything, that happens.
Well, Schellenberger says what really needs to happen now is more investment into the juvenile justice system and reaching these juveniles earlier in life before it's too late. We'll have much more for him coming up at 5 o'clock, but live for now from the Towson Courthouse, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Maxine, thank you. Critics of the state's policies are taking issue with the Juvenile Justice Reform Act that Maxine mentioned. It prevents children 13 and under from being charged with most crimes. If a child commits a misdemeanor, the maximum sentence is 6 months probation. If a child commits a felony, the maximum penalty is 1 year probation. Then there's the Child Interrogation Protection Act. That stops law enforcement from speaking with any child until they've spoken with an attorney. Unlike adults, children cannot waive the right to speak with an attorney. Critics have called on the governor to call a special session to pass new laws to curb crime. Fox 45 News pressed the governor on that possibility.
Yeah, there's no plan to have a special session, and while I'm working closely with the legislature, I'm working closely with local law enforcement and local elected officials, I also know that we don't have to wait for a session in order to address something that is the #1 priority for our administration. We are focused on making sure that we are getting and keeping these violent offenders, repeat violent offenders, off of our streets. We're focusing on making sure we're addressing the issue of trafficking of both guns and drugs into our communities and neighborhoods, and we've got to lift up the profession of law enforcement. You know, we need to make sure that people know that we need to have a strong supply and a strong pipeline for people in law enforcement. So we don't need to call a special session at this time to be able to address those things, and we can work in partnership to be able to make it happen.
Well, 2 weeks ago, we asked if you think the governor should call a special session to combat violent crime. 93% of those who responded say yes. And we want you to join the conversation. We're asking again for our question of the day. Should Governor Moore call a special session to combat violent crime? You can vote by going to foxbaltimore.com/vote. And Fox 45 News is working to make your voice heard. Scan the QR code right there on your screen. It'll take you to our website where we put together a list of email addresses and phone numbers for your state senators and delegates, including the House Speaker and Senate President.
Taking a live look outside right now, there are some blisteringly hot temperatures across the state, along with the near record high warmth that we're also dealing with another air quality alert. Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers is here with your forecast. And Jonathan, it was so hot today, you could fry an egg inside your refrigerator.
Wow.
That's hot.
Now that's hot. All right. Code orange air quality alert is in effect, yes, Guy, for the entire area except for north and east of the city, where in fact southern Hartford County as well as Cecil County under a code red air quality alert. So that means the general public, not just sensitive groups, general public should spend some extra time inside. This is not going to be because of that Canadian wildfire smoke that we're so used to. It's actually low level ozone or pollution downstairs here in the atmosphere. We don't usually have ozone here down in the atmosphere towards the surface. We usually have it up in the atmosphere. So this is unhealthy to breathe. So that's why we have some of those air quality alerts. On top of that, I mean, it's hot, 92 degrees, winds out of the west at 6. But the good news here is the dew point, that measure of moisture in the air, still only in the 50s. So that means 92 in Baltimore, 90 over at Cockeysville. Feels very much like the temperature. In fact, it feels a little bit cooler than it actually is. 90 is what it feels like here in Baltimore right now, but humidity levels will come up by tomorrow. For now, though, overnight, it looks like into this evening, it turns from hot to fairly pleasant as that dry air stays for now, but things are going to get worse from here on out, and I'll let you know how the air quality looks into tomorrow. That's coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
Jonathan, thank you. Put the power of the Weather Authority Storm Center in your hands. Download the free WBFF Weather Authority app for your smartphone. Use our powerful Doppler radar to follow storms to your street. Go to your app store and search for WBFF to get started.
This policy is not about a flag ban. It is about removing all distractions from our classrooms.
Anne Arundel County School Board meets right now to decide on what flags can be displayed in the classroom. The bitter debate playing out.
A hearing will get underway in an hour inside Baltimore City Hall. The focus, BGE's installation of those new gas regulators at Baltimore homes. The questions coming forward tonight.
Consumer price inflation falling to the lowest level in more than 2 years. I'm Atrell Nashar with why many households still aren't feeling much relief.
Happening right now, the trial for Akia Eggleston's murder is underway. The judge and jury hearing opening statements. 41-year-old Michael Robertson is facing multiple first-degree murder charges. Akia Eggleston went missing back in 2017 while she was 8 months pregnant. Police say Robertson was the father of Eggleston's unborn child. The case was later ruled a homicide, and Robertson was arrested last year. Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell's in the courtroom right now. She'll have a live update at 5 with the latest from what's going on in court today.
Consumer prices in June were up 3% over last year, according to new Labor Department data. But if you're not seeing more wiggle room in your budget, you're not alone. National correspondent Dr. Al-Nashar talks with Americans about making ends meet.
For American consumers, it's been an exhausting 2 years of soaring prices. Now, inflation is the closest it's been since spring of 2021 to a stable rate of 2%. But there's still a way to go.
What I perceive is that the prices are still going up.
In June, shelter was once again the biggest driver of inflation. Housing costs up 0.4% from May and up 7.8% from June of last year. Among the items driving down the rate of inflation are gas, utilities, used cars, and airfare. But household budgets are still stretched thin. A new Bankrate survey finds Americans on average say they'd need to earn about $233,000 a year to feel secure or comfortable with their finances. Beyond that,
to feel financially rich or financially free, Americans on average feel that they need to earn about $483,000 a year. Looking at data from the Census Bureau, workers in 2021 who were full-time, year-round employed, they're making about $75,000 a year.
Bankrate analyst Sarah Foster says among those in the survey who said they don't feel financially secure, about 2/3 blamed high inflation.
It's becoming increasingly harder for Americans to avoid getting priced out of America.
That strain is expected to show up during back-to-school shopping. Deloitte forecasts parents will spend 10% less than they did last year. It's the firm's first projected decline in nearly a decade. In Washington, I'm Al-Nashar.
Let's take a live look outside right now at the Inner Harbor and also Towson. Well, that high heat this weekend continues with temperatures reaching, as we said, near record highs today. It is really hot out there, Mary.
It is. Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers is here with how long this heat wave. Can we call it a heat wave? Not yet.
Oh, we can.
Okay, good. I never want to, step out of the boundaries there.
That's right. Well, temperatures now going to be 90s at least for about 6-7 days, maybe up to 9-10 days straight. So let's go ahead and take a look. For today, first off, the bad news, it actually, as things go, it could be worse. The humidity could be a lot higher. Temperatures are hot, but it's not that humid. The bad news is that we do have poor air quality, and this is because of that sunshine beating down on us here with very few clouds and a lot of pollution down where we live here in the atmosphere. That also adds to excessive ozone. Now, that means that we have a code orange air quality alert for the entire area except north and east of the city. That's a code red. This is the rest of the afternoon into this evening. We'll improve a little bit tomorrow, but I think up and down the 95 and 97 corridor will probably be in a code orange day for tomorrow. But southern portions of Harford County, Cecil County, you're under a code red for the rest of the day. So that means potentially the general public could be feeling some of these effects on top of those folks that are the sensitive groups, the very young, the elderly, as well as those with pre-existing respiratory issues. The code orange areas, those sensitive groups, they're going to have to spend some extra time inside the rest of today. Right now, Toyota H, Inner Harbor Skycam, you see some of that haze. So, yes, that's that pollution I was talking about. 92 degrees as we take a beautiful look downtown at 95 and 395 there. Winds out of the west at 6 miles an hour. Humidity, though, it's low at 30%. Dew point at 56 degrees. So temperature at 92 Baltimore, 91 at Cockeysville. It feels very much like the actual temperature actually is. 90 degrees here in Baltimore actually feels a little bit less than the temperature, which is fairly unusual around here. It's kind of like desertified heat, if you will. 93 is what it feels like at Cockeysville, 92 at Bel Air, but don't get used to it. Don't think this is going to last. I think for tomorrow, humidity begins to come up, and then it is just full force for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, into Monday of next week. So here we go. Back to usual summertime. Beat goes on. HD radar, showers and thunderstorms off to our north and west. That weather maker is going to push into this dry, hot air mass that we've been enjoying. Well, I mean, at least a dry weather that we've been enjoying over the past couple of days. And that will introduce a chance of some storms by late tomorrow, perhaps. Let's go ahead and take a look at the future scan overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning. Not quite as cool as we started for today and yesterday morning. Back down to about 70 or so in the cool spots. Otherwise, low to mid 70s. And then for tomorrow afternoon, we're hot again. Humidity comes up, so it's going to feel hotter than it is today. And there are your showers and storms. Not expecting severe weather, but again, it looks like with that extra humidity, the shower and storm chances will rise for late tomorrow. About a 20% chance. Again, that's mainly tomorrow evening, 91 on Friday. And there you go. Maybe a spot shower or storm all the way through the weekend. Don't cancel plans here, but it is going to be hot and humid. Highs in the low to mid 90s all the way through next Wednesday.
Jonathan, thanks. One of the drivers in the Beltway crash that killed 6 people is out of jail tonight. The new details on their release and when they'll be back in court. They said they would pay her back, but she still has not gotten her money. The latest on a woman's fight for justice after the city wrongfully sold her home. Million people in this nation don't have access to primary care. For those that can get to see a doctor, it might take a while for you to be seen. The National Desk's Janae Bowen has an exclusive look at new data detailing patient wait times and a key reason for the delay.
They can't schedule anyone.
Gloria Jones has been waiting to see a primary care doctor since October.
I'm sure there are many people that wouldn't even bother. And they would miss follow-up appointments that might be very important for them.
She's right. A new survey from the American Association of Nurse Practitioners shows 40% of adults have experienced a longer than reasonable wait for health care. Nearly half of those folks gave up on getting an appointment. 26% reported waiting more than 2 months.
Which is a challenge because when we have access to care issues, we know that healthcare costs go up. There's an increased risk of complications. Just like we saw with COVID, people weren't getting the care they needed.
Sophia L. Thomas with the American Association of Nurse Practitioners says a key reason for unreasonable wait times is the barriers for some healthcare professionals to serve patients.
We have 355,000 nurse practitioners out there really ready, willing, and able to provide help and care. But at the same time, we do have some states that don't allow nurse practitioners to practice at the top of their education.
According to nursejournal.org, currently nurse practitioners can practice independently in 27 states in Washington, D.C. Everywhere else requires that they work with a physician. The American Medical Association says nurse practitioners should not practice alone because they do not have the same training as physicians. But the expert I spoke with says both have the same medical standards. Either way, something has got to be done for people waiting for care. Reporting for the National Desk, I'm Janae Bowens.
Will there be new restrictions on flags in Anne Arundel County schools? The latest as the school board makes a decision on the controversial policy today. A state leader agreeing to pay parents what they're owed, but it's unclear when the money will come. The demand for accountability from parents tonight in the Maryland 529 crisis. BGE will face the Baltimore City Council in just half an hour. The controversy surrounding their plans to install new external gas regulators.
I can say, we don't like these exterior regulators. They are obtrusive in our historic districts, and they do detract from the historic character.
The executive director of Baltimore's Historic Commission talks bluntly about the BGE construction.
Yeah, the group suing BGE over those external gas regulators has been critical of the lack of action by the city's Historic Preservation Commission, or CHAP.
Fox 45's Amy Simpson is live right now at City Hall ahead of a hearing tonight over the controversial utility work. Amy?
Yes, Kai, BGE will be in the hot seat in front of City Council here tonight. It'll be the first time we hear publicly from BGE about this debate over those external gas regulators. And this comes as, like you just said, the city's Historical Commission is also in the crossfire on this topic. Take a listen.
It's become a hot button issue in Baltimore City. These external gas regulators, thousands of them already installed. As BGE says the regulators are being moved outdoors to improve safety ahead of its move to a high pressure gas system. But that utility work right now halted by a court injunction. Residents questioning BGE's message about safety, fearing rate increases and continued construction on homes and sidewalks. Some allege the utility company is strong-arming residents to agree to this work.
BG&E is operating like a Baltimore City gang, like a cartel that thinks that the rules don't apply to them.
Just yesterday, the group behind a class action lawsuit against BGE and the external regulators, also critical of the group tasked with protecting and advocating for Baltimore's historic properties.
Bulldozers rolled in and bore holes through the facades of their historic homes were done without anybody raising a finger. The deafening silence is our first concern.
Baltimore's Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation, or CHAP, publicly addressed the issue yesterday for the first time since March 2022.
Also, you know that there is currently a lawsuit out there between homeowners and BGE.
After coverage of CHAP's meeting yesterday, a resident sharing a note sent to the commission's executive director, questioning its anemic response to this debate over gas regulators, saying this is a true test of your commission's mission. Today, CHAP's executive director speaking to FOX45 News.
I have received hundreds of emails about this.
But as this debate gained momentum and attention over the last month, we asked why CHAP didn't join the conversation sooner, as 16 months have come and gone since CHAP's last public hearing on gas regulators.
Oh, I think we've always been in the conversation. You know, maybe it wasn't a conversation with the press but we've always been in this conversation.
CHAP's executive director also reacting to those 3 women arrested in Federal Hill last month as they intentionally blocked utility crews. Some residents along Federal Hill's Warren Ave wanting to protect their historic properties from drills and jackhammers.
It was very dramatic. It was very intense, and I wish it didn't happen.
The commission says it stopped approving BGE's requests to install regulators in historic spots back in May. CHAP opting to hold its own public hearing on regulators in about a month, as this board also has questions about BGE's consistent message that external regulators are for safety.
I think the commission is looking for more information to ensure that it is a safety issue, and you know what that means.
Now that city council hearing with BGE over these external gas regulators expected to get underway in a little under half an hour now at 5 p.m. inside of City Hall here. Meanwhile, this afternoon, we've also learned that City Councilman Zeke Cohen, who represents Fells Point, plans to call on the Public Service Commission to reject proposed multi-year rate hikes that have been proposed by BGE. We'll keep you posted. We're live outside of City Hall. Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
All right, Amy, thank you. BGE has seen its share of backlash this year. Earlier in the year, the city struck a new deal with the company over the city's conduit system. 2 members of the Board of Estimates, Council President Nick Mosby and Comptroller Bill Henry, tried to stop the vote. Mayor Brandon Scott went through with the deal anyway without their approval. 2 days after the mayor approved it, BGE requested rate hikes for each year of the contract, increasing the average bill a little more than $10 a month. The Maryland Public Service Commission would have to approve that. A year-long battle between Maryland families and the state's college trust has come to a close this week. Treasurer Derek Davis, whose office took over the troubled agency last month, announced plans to make families whole again. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor has details.
I think the evidence was overwhelming, and I am just grateful that he did the right thing and honored our contracts.
For thousands of Maryland families investing in the state's college savings plan, this letter from Treasurer Derek Davis reestablishing and backdating a 6% earnings rate ends a year-long nightmare. A nightmare that began with an alleged calculation error that quietly froze the interest on all Maryland 529 prepaid accounts, slashing some parents' savings by tens of thousands of dollars.
I've had to tap into my savings. I'm also looking at my
retirement funds.
Sleepless nights, lots of sleepless nights.
Initially, Maryland 529 leadership arguing the money appeared in their accounts by mistake and therefore was no longer owed. But parents took their fight to lawmakers.
Frankly, it's disgraceful. It's a total disaster, obviously.
Who ultimately voted to turn management of the state's college trust over to the treasurer's office. And now, a month into taking the reins, Treasurer Davis releasing a 52-page memo detailing what went wrong and vowing to make families whole. But with fall payments just weeks away, the clock is ticking on another tuition cycle, and many questions remain.
What's the timeline? There's no process yet. There's no claims process yet. So, when is that going to happen?
After the lengthy battle, account holder Lisa Getter says some families are in dire need of funds.
I know he said he's prioritizing 11,000 accounts of kids who are currently in college. But how fast that can be updated.
To ease fears and help get answers fast, Getter is among a small group of parents meeting with Davis in Annapolis this afternoon. They'll be presenting him this list of 15 questions collected from a Facebook group of more than 1,000 affected families. And not only do they want to know when they'll get their money back, they want to know who will be paying for this mistake.
In my opinion, that was malfeasance, and I would love to see someone held responsible for it.
Responsible for a mistake that cost many Maryland families time, money, and peace of mind.
There are a lot of people who have had significant hardship. There are people who dropped out of school because of this. How do you make that right?
Well, the months-long battle between parents and Maryland 529 leaders over the savings has led to multiple resignations from leaders in the program. In January, former 529 board chair Pete Sirigatis left shortly after testifying on the freeze in front of state lawmakers. Then, a month later, board member Jessica McCain left after serving only 2 years of her 4-year term.
Well, one of the drivers in the Beltway crash that killed 6 people earlier this year has been released from jail. After initially being denied bail, Lisa Lee is now out on home detention due to medical issues. The 54-year-old will only be allowed to leave her home for medical reasons, and when she needs to go to appointments, she will not be allowed to drive herself. Lee and 20-year-old Malachi Brown are both facing charges in the March crash. Prosecutors say both drivers were going over 120 miles per hour in the construction zone when they collided, flipped into the median, and killed 6 construction workers. A hearing will be held on August 1st to set Lee's trial date.
6 days after a system-wide shutdown, Baltimore's subway system is running again. The Maryland Transportation Agency on Friday shut down the system after an electrical fire at the Owings Mills station. MTA hasn't released any other updates, but says they continue to inspect the system. Riders should plan for some delays because trains are single tracking between West Cold Spring Lane and State Center downtown.
Well, Anne Arundel County's Board of Education votes to reject a policy limiting flags in schools. It comes after weeks of bitter debate.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative, 1 abstention. Motion fails.
Board member Corinne Frank proposed the policy. It would have banned flags other than the city, county, state, and national flag from being displayed in classrooms. People who showed up today overwhelmingly spoke out against that proposed policy.
If you pass this policy, the message is this. We want to protect the fragility of those who don't acknowledge the LGBTQ+ identity. Stop making false correlations with lack of student achievement. Teachers don't use flags to exclude or to teach students how to be of a certain identity.
When you paint queer identities as ideologies, you are sending the message that we are somehow a threat. To say this is to deny the lived experiences of millions of people.
We also heard from board members about their decision.
At its core, the policy allows for all students to feel welcome, not just the ones who see their flags on a wall. These questions are in front of us, and we are abdicating responsibility by not creating a policy. This policy doesn't create a ceiling, it creates a floor.
By demanding that all differences be hidden, simply because some find them too uncomfortable to recognize, we will fail in our mission, handed down to us by Franklin and others to equip our students for the hard, sometimes painful work that is required to continue the American experiment and keep our republic for the next generations.
Well, last year, the Carroll County School Board voted to ban political flags on property, including pride flags. Students are still allowed to wear or show materials like pride flags on their clothing. The only flags permitted on school property are the American flag, the Maryland state flag, the Carroll County flags, and those related to student achievement, sports banners, and other nations.
Howard County families are in a race against time to stop their own school system from cutting bus service to roughly 3,500 students. Last month, Project Baltimore walked with some of those students, some as young as kindergarten, who will now be walking more than a mile along roads with no sidewalks and limited visibility to get to school. Since telling that story, many people expressed concerns about the busing situation, even starting an online petition. One Howard County parent is part of that movement to restore bus service.
So we're asking them just to pause for 1 year, just for 1 year, to get community engagement, to try and make sure that they're considering all aspects before they make such an impactful change to the county.
Well, tonight on Fox 45 News at 10, how these families plan to make their voices heard one last time.
Knowing that it's been resolved is a huge weight that has been lifted.
Tonight, a Baltimore City resident who was at risk of losing her home is no longer feeling relief that the city acknowledged its mistake. Fox 45 News has previously reported the city admitted Ancilla Crawford's home was wrongfully sold in a tax sale. The error occurred when Crawford's home was mistaken for the vacant lot across the street. Well, after weeks of pressing the city for answers, a spokesperson from the mayor's office said Crawford would be refunded for the costs she sustained to save her home, about $2,700. But that was a month ago, and according to Crawford's attorney, she hasn't received her reimbursement.
Their property rolls are riddled with error. This is a ridiculous situation that a homeowner with no lawn lost her house because of a lawn mowing bill for the house across the street.
Well, today, Fox 45 News sent follow-up questions to the city asking why Crawford hasn't been contacted and when would she be reimbursed. As of news time tonight, we've not heard back.
The Ozempic craze setting off a new competition. I'm Angela Brown in Washington, D.C. We'll look into the race to find the next weight loss wonder drug in pill form that the public can afford and get the results of the wealthy.
And if you're going to be doing some mowing this afternoon, I'd take it easy. A code orange air quality alert in effect, actually a code red for southern Harford County and Cecil County. Temperatures in the low to mid 90s, falling into the 80s. Make sure you stay hydrated. I'm going to let you know if we have any hope of cooling coming up in my full Weather Authority forecast.
The Ozempic craze is turning into a major competition. Drug makers are racing to develop the next weight loss drug. The National Desk, Angela Brown, has the latest on how multiple drug makers are looking for federal approval on their new weight loss tools.
Right now, Ozempic is injected. The FDA approved it for type 2 diabetes, but it also helps people shed pounds. Another drug in the mix is Wegovy. The FDA approved that for weight loss. It's also injected. The race is on now to develop these types of drugs in pill forms. Right now, it's a three-company competition. Eli Lilly, Pfizer, Novo Nordisk. Novo Nordisk, the maker of Ozempic and Wegovy, now seeking FDA approval on a weight loss pill, no injection. We talked to weight loss experts about how these drugs work.
With these medications, what happens is they suppress your appetite, which help you in a variety of different ways, stop you from overeating.
This as America is facing an obesity crisis. The CDC says over 100 million adults are obese. The Childhood Obesity Report found 16.2% of youths ages 10 to 17 are considered obese. Our medical reporter Liz Bonus talked to pediatricians in Ohio about what parents can do now to help their kids without a pill.
The 5210 is the abbreviation we use, and that stands for 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, 2 hours or less of screen time a day, 1 hour of physical activity every day, and then no sugary drinks, pop, soda, juice, those types of things.
These pills are still being developed, so the price, the age range for use is still a long way off. The FDA has to determine if it's safe, but it could be cheaper than the injected version already on the market. Wegovy's list price tops $1,300. Ozempic can run $935 per month. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
Here's a live look outside tonight. These are the conditions at the Inner Harbor, and we've been feeling some blistering heat for the last couple of days and dealing with a code orange air alert. Here's Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers.
Yeah, and the code orange air quality alert likely will continue into tomorrow as well, especially up and down the 95 and 97 corridor, including Metro Baltimore and Metro Annapolis. With a little unfortunate help from the Bay, we're actually increasing some ozone downstairs in the atmosphere where we live. It's supposed to be upstairs in the atmosphere. That's where it's helpful. Down here, it's unhealthy to breathe. So that is air pollution that we have to deal with. So for the rest of today into this evening, a code orange air quality alert continues, except here on the northern side of the Bay, where in fact southern Harford County as well as Cecil County continues under a code red air quality alert. So it's even worse there. The general public actually has to spend extra time inside there. Otherwise, it's unhealthy for sensitive groups, the very young, the elderly. Those with pre-existing respiratory issues suggested they spend some extra time inside. Taking a look at our traffic camera network, you see some slow traffic right around York Road here on I-695 right now on the Beltway on the north side. 92 winds out of the west at 6, but ooh, look at that humidity. Not bad. 30%. It actually feels cooler than it actually is on the heat index. And that's unusual to say around here, but it's almost kind of like desert heat. And, you know, we'll take that. We had that yesterday. We'll have it today. We'll have it the rest of this afternoon. Tomorrow, that will change. 92 here in Baltimore, 90 at Cockeysville. We're at 93 at Westminster and Frederick. A real feel temperature of 90 in Baltimore. Again, with that dry air, your body can really cool down a lot more effectively. So that's why it feels a little bit cooler than it is. It does feel like 95, though, at Laurel as well as down toward places in PG County and down D.C. way. Now, for the next several days, the humidity levels, look at this, they come up significantly. Dew points into the 60s tomorrow. Yep, there you go. We're back into the full-on tropical zone as we work into the weekend. So don't get too used to this, but we do have some showers and storms to our north. For now, it's dry. Those showers and thunderstorms will work in with that extra humidity by the time we get to tomorrow with our next weather maker. I think it comes tomorrow late afternoon into the evening. Let's track it on the future scan. Overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning. Not quite as cool, not those 60s that we enjoyed, maybe more so low to mid 70s. Could have a couple of upper 60s, but the humidity really comes back tomorrow. High temperatures back in the low to mid 90s. Going to feel a lot more uncomfortable. And there you go by late in the day by 4:45. Not expecting necessarily severe weather, but showers and thunderstorms roll in, and the PM commute could be a lot messier for tomorrow. than it is going to be for today. 96 tomorrow afternoon. There are those spot showers and storms in the afternoon. Even a better risk coming for Friday. Look at this. This heat wave continues all the way through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, and the humidity to boot from Friday and beyond.
All right, Jonathan, thank you. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, opening arguments in the trial of a man accused of killing a pregnant Baltimore woman. New information coming into the newsroom. And the blistering heat isn't going away. What you need to know about picking the right AC unit. Well, we're in the dog days of summer in the state of Maryland right now, and it's a good time to make sure your air conditioner is running well and efficiently. Patrice Sanders reveals some simple summer DIY tips, plus tells you which ACs score the best from its latest round of tests.
Summer is here, and like it or not, the heat is on. That's especially true inside Consumer Reports' specially designed testing chamber, where the heat is cranked to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, followed by the all-important test: how fast can each air conditioner cool the space by 10 degrees?
Most air conditioners will cool your space, but the best will do it quickly and quietly.
So performance matters when it comes to window ACs. But before you buy, it's important to size up your space. An AC that's too small will be underpowered, and it will never keep up on those hot days. However, if you go too large, it might cycle too quickly and not dry out the air, leaving your space a little humid. This LG earns top scores for cooling rooms under 250 square feet in under 15 minutes. For medium-sized rooms, this Medea is a great option. And then for larger rooms, consider this Frigidaire. What about central AC?
We have survey data from thousands of our members where we look at how reliable certain brands are and how satisfied our members are with those brands.
Several brands stand out in the survey for reliability and owner satisfaction, including Armstrong, Duquesne, American Standard, Bryant, Carrier, Lennox, and Trane. But even the best AC can struggle to keep cool when outside temps soar. To save energy and money, Consumer Reports has some tips.
Use the weather stripping and the foam panels that are supplied with that unit.
About once a month, remove the filter, vacuum it gently, and then wash it with soap and water. When your central AC filter needs to be replaced, this Filtrete fits most HVAC systems. And enlist the help of a ceiling fan. It allows you to raise your AC by a couple of degrees and still feel just as cool. Wondering whether a portable air conditioner is the way to go? Consumer Reports says this type is often pricier and isn't as efficient compared to window ACs, but for some, it is the only option. Patrice Sanders, Fox 45 News.
Coming up at 5 o'clock, Baltimore police released video of a deadly shootout in East Baltimore, the encounter that led to the death of a man. Young people at the center of violence as victims and suspects. We press states' attorneys around Maryland about the effectiveness of juvenile justice laws. Fox 45 News investigates communication failures of the Brooklyn mass shooting, the disconnect between the mayor's office and nonprofits running Safe Streets.
Juvenile justice laws in the state could be making it harder for law enforcement to do their job. State's attorneys around Maryland speak on those laws.
And new body camera footage from police from a police-involved shooting. What we're learning about what led up to this incident.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 5.
As a community, it's time for us to stand up. I'm tired. There's no way we should keep going through this. This mother will never get her baby back. She gotta live with that. Y'all can go on about your business. Once this is over with, forget about it. She gotta live with this for the rest of her life.
It's been more than a week since one of Baltimore's largest mass shootings, and still more questions than answers surrounding communication failures the hours leading up to the shooting. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. There seems to be a disconnect between the mayor's office and one of the nonprofits running Safe Streets on the interaction some workers had at the block party hours before that shooting occurred.
The shooting is also shining a light on the juvenile justice system in place in Maryland and how effectively new laws are in preventing violence.
We have extensive live team coverage tonight. Maxine Stryker is taking a closer look at those laws on the books and how states' attorneys across the state are reacting.
We begin with Mackenzie Frost in those contradicting statements about the mediations done by workers. Mackenzie?
Yeah, Kai and Mary, the story seems to be changing surrounding the mediation Safe Streets workers were involved in before the bullets started flying at Brooklyn homes. Meanwhile, Mayor Brandon Scott isn't saying anything. With the journey to healing underway in Brooklyn homes, the search for answers continues. What Safe Streets workers did before the gunfire began remains unclear. We know 4 Safe Streets workers were at Brooklyn Day. Tuesday, the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, or MONSE, sent us a statement from Catholic Charities. That's the nonprofit running the Safe Streets Brooklyn site. According to this statement, the Safe Streets workers showed up to Brooklyn Day around 9 o'clock Saturday night and left around 11:30 when their shift ended. But the mediations by the workers are where the story changes. Catholic Charities says the violence interrupters mediated a few conflicts with none directly involving guns. MONSE telling us on July 5th, 4 unarmed Safe Streets staff responded to a scene with numerous armed individuals.
We have a motion to approve.
After a Board of Estimates meeting Wednesday morning, we tried to ask Mayor Brandon Scott about the changing gun stories. Mayor Scott, but he walked out without taking our questions. So we immediately sent an email to his office asking what we would have asked in person. What actually happened? Why are there conflicting stories? Those questions ignored. We also asked the mayor about the communication policy MONSE says it's reviewing, since none of the Safe Streets workers alerted the police or any other agency about the block party or the possible threat. We asked, will a change include requiring Safe Streets workers alerting other agencies of a possible threat? Will Safe Streets workers be required to stay at events like Brooklyn Day in the future? Again, the mayor refusing to answer. Instead, MONSE responding to our question saying Catholic Charities is now being more specific about the conflicts Safe Streets workers mediated. We have also been asking MONSE for days when that policy will change and if it will require Safe Streets workers to alert others and if workers will be required to stay at events later. Those questions lingering without an answer.
Everything that's happened because somebody failed.
Marcus Strider-Dent, leader of the Guardian Angels, says he wants answers about Safe Streets. The Guardian Angels is a nonprofit volunteer organization in the city working to curb the bloodshed too.
You can't have people with guns and knives and stuff and not tell the police, especially when you are funded to help with this. That's what you're doing. You're the flagship group. How can you not make a phone call and say, hey, this is going on? The program itself and how it operates, it's just not right.
Strider's concerns come after Fox 45's years-long investigation into Safe Streets, revealing cracks in accountability, transparency concerns, and questions about the program's effectiveness. And it's not just community groups demanding details.
We want to make sure this never happens again.
Councilman Mark Conway will chair Thursday's hearing into the mass shooting. He says BPD and several other agencies need to explain how the chaos unfolded.
Pieces, really beg the question for me, where was there a breakdown in communication well before 11, days before, maybe even weeks before, because you don't just host an event with 1,000 people and plan it the day before. Someone had to know this was coming.
Especially when Safe Streets workers were there 3.5 hours before the first trigger was pulled. Meanwhile, friends and family mourn the loss of Kylis Fagbemi, the 20-year-old killed after being shot at Brooklyn homes, left wondering.
I don't even know I'm speechless at this point.
Nobody want to keep living, looking over their shoulder if they got ops, looking over their shoulder now if they're going to make it to tomorrow.
When things will get better in Baltimore. Now, in addition to the concerns surrounding Safe Streets, there are still outstanding questions about the response time from Baltimore Police Department. And all of these things the council members could demand answers to during that hearing that's set to take place tomorrow evening. We're live in the newsroom. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. Meanwhile, the 17-year-old arrested in connection with the shooting is reigniting concerns about Maryland's juvenile justice laws. Fox 45 News has heard complaints about the laws from leaders across the state now for months. And that includes the Prince George's County Executive and Police Chief, as well as the Harford County Sheriff and most recently, Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates. They say the laws leave police and prosecutors' hands tied.
To be honest, I think it's one of the worst pieces of legislation I've ever read, because what it has done is taken the process of holding juveniles accountable away from prosecutors.
Those protections have given way to a protection of some people who have committed very heinous crimes, which, yes, that does hamper what we are doing now.
It's becoming more and more difficult to hold juveniles accountable.
Basically, a lot of things that unfortunately young people find themselves getting involved in, police can no longer take action.
Several top prosecutors across the state of Maryland are speaking out, saying their hands are tied when it comes to holding juveniles accountable because of action taken by the General Assembly. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live in Towson right now with what they're saying. Maxine?
Well, Kai, it's specifically two laws on the books that many states' attorneys across Maryland are taking issue with. They say they may be leading to this rise in juvenile crime, and they're making their jobs harder.
As juvenile crime spikes across Maryland, the state's top prosecutors are calling for change from the Maryland General Assembly, saying their hands are tied when it comes to making sure young people know the consequences of their criminal actions.
I think without question, over the last several years, the General Assembly has changed a number of the laws that deal with juvenile crime. And I think that's certainly led to some problems.
We reached out to every state's attorney in Maryland with a series of questions, including, do you believe the Maryland General Assembly has made it difficult for your office to hold juveniles accountable for criminal acts? And do you support the Juvenile Justice Reform Act of 2022 and the Child Interrogation Protection Act of 2022? Why or why not? Of the 24 states' attorneys, 9 answered our questions, and all of them agreed the General Assembly has made it more difficult to hold juveniles accountable.
Absolutely.
Including Baltimore County State's Attorney Scott Schellenberger, who takes issue with some parts of the Juvenile Justice Reform Act passed last year.
They know that, nothing's really going to happen to them if they keep their crime in a certain limit of types of crimes. So if they're 10 to 13 and they don't commit a crime of violence, they're not going to get anything. It's going to be very little, if anything, that happens.
While those 13 and under are limited to crimes of violence, a juvenile under 10 cannot be charged. The law also calls for 6 months probation for juveniles who commit adult misdemeanors and 1 year probation for juveniles who commit adult felonies.
That may not be enough time to help them with the things that they need.
The Child Interrogation Protection Act affects the ability of police to question juvenile suspects or witnesses.
So my question in the General Assembly was, what do you do with somebody like Nick Browning? He killed both of his parents. That means the gun we were looking for, if we hadn't been able to interview him, we would have still been out on the street, and we would not have been able to proceed with how we found that gun.
Schellenberger says what really needs to happen is more investment in the juvenile justice system with a focus on early intervention.
So that when we have a 10-year-old who we should be able to charge with theft, we can give that family the resources they need so that I don't have to put them in jail for the rest of their life when they kill somebody at the age of 17. And more importantly, I don't have to sit in a room with a victim's family to explain to them why this 17-year-old killed their loved one.
Now, advocates of the Juvenile Justice Reform Act, they argue that criminalizing children does not improve public safety. In Towson, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Maxine, thank you. Critics take issue with the Juvenile Justice Reform Act. It prevents children 13 and under from being charged with most crimes. If a child commits a misdemeanor, the maximum sentence is 6 months probation. If a child commits a felony, the maximum penalty is 1 year probation.
And then there is the Child Interrogation Protection Act. It stops law enforcement from speaking with any child until they've spoken with an attorney. Unlike adults, children can't waive the right to speak with an attorney. Critics have called on the governor to call for a special session to pass new laws to curb crime. Fox 45 News pressed the governor on that possibility this week.
Yeah, there's no plan to have a special session, and while I'm working closely with the legislature, I'm working closely with local law enforcement and local elected officials, I also know that we don't have to wait for a session in order to address something that is the #1 priority for our administration. We are focused on making sure that we are getting and keeping these violent offenders, repeat violent offenders, off of our streets. We're focusing on making sure we're addressing the issue of trafficking of both guns and drugs into our communities and neighborhoods, and we've got to lift up the profession of law enforcement. You know, we need to make sure that people know that we need to have a strong supply and a strong pipeline for people in law enforcement. So we don't need to call a special session at this time to be able to address those things, and we can work in partnership to be able to make it happen.
2 weeks ago, we asked you if you think the governor should call a special session to combat violent crime. 93% of those who responded said yes. We'd like you to join the conversation. Our question of the day, should Governor Moore call a special session to combat violent crime? So far, 95% of those who have voted say yes. You can vote by going to foxbaltimore.com/vote.
Fox 45 News is making your voice heard. Scan the QR code on your screen. It'll take you to our website, where we've put together a list of email addresses and phone numbers of your state senators and delegates, including the House Speaker and Senate President.
New tonight, security and body camera video show a deadly police shooting.
This video is from an incident late last month, just blocks from Patterson Park. In the footage, you can see a suspect fleeing police, getting out of his car, firing at officers, then being shot and killed.
Fox 45's Vincent Hill joins us live right now with details. Vincent?
Yeah, Kyle, it happened back on June 29th. Police said they were trying to arrest 40-year-old Daryl Gamble. Now, take a look at this video. Gamble can be seen speeding away from police through a busy residential neighborhood, eventually crashing his car and getting out on foot. Seconds later, Gamble can be seen firing a .40 caliber handgun at police, those officers returning fire. Gamble then discards the handgun and pulls out what police describe as an AK-47 style rifle, takes cover behind a parked car and begins to fire again. Gamble is then struck several times by officers who were approaching the other end of Milton Avenue. When it was all said and done, at least 100 rounds were fired.
We know there were probably around 40 rounds fired. We have not dissected that down yet. As for the individual, we found, so far, I believe we found 33 casings from his weapon. But again, we're still going through the process of determining the exact amount.
5 police shot in total. Police say Gamble also had a stolen .357 handgun in his bag, which was fully loaded, and a shotgun inside that car. They say Gamble was wanted on drug and weapons charges. Kai?
Vincent, you were a police officer, and a question I know you probably have heard a lot, and I've heard as a journalist, is people in the public will ask, why won't an officer shoot someone in the leg or in the arm or some other area to take them down but not kill them? And what is the police response typically for that kind of question?
Well, Kai, it's quite simple. It all goes down to training. And also, if you take my legs out, I still have 2 hands that I can also fire back at police. Just because someone is shot in the leg, unlike the movies, it doesn't necessarily mean they're incapacitated. So police are trained to eliminate the threat, which is why they shoot center mass. For now, we're live in the control room. Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
Vincent, thank you. Coming up after the break on Fox 45, the first day of arguments for the man accused of murdering a Baltimore woman and her unborn child. The new information we're learning.
A proposal to limit flags in schools across Anne Arundel County fails. How the vote went down today.
And as we look ahead to the 2024 presidential race, we're also looking into voter confidence, how one governor is aiming to avoid miscounting concerns. New tonight, more than 6 years after Baltimore pregnant woman was last seen, the trial begins for the man accused of killing her and her unborn child.
Akia Eggleston was 8 months pregnant when she failed to show up to her baby shower back in May of 2017. 5 years later, police arrested Michael Robertson, the father of her unborn child, and charged him with murder.
Alexa Ashwell has been covering this case since Akia Eggleston was reported missing. She joins us live outside the Baltimore City Circuit Court, where that trial is underway. Alexa.
Yes, after opening statements, jurors listened to testimony from 7 witnesses, all called by the state and either a friend or family member of Akia Eggleston. Prosecutors seemingly mapping out a timeline, her last known communications and whereabouts, as well as the nature of her relationship with the defendant, Michael Robertson. Here at the Baltimore City Circuit Courthouse, a long-awaited day.
Seeing him for the first time after 5 years is a little unsettling. And I think everyone that is here on Akia's behalf probably has the same feeling that we all just want to seek justice.
In opening statements, the state painting a picture of a love triangle that ended in murder. Akia Eggleston was pregnant with Michael Robertson's child, but Robertson was also in a relationship with another woman whom he shared 2 children with. Prosecutors playing one of his 3 interviews with police where Robertson says in part, "We got into it, and I chose Haley." The state alleging Akia's belief she and Robertson were going to move in together was all a ruse. And instead, Robertson killed her inside her Cherry Hill home. The state saying he was successful in disposing of her body. It's never been found. The defense maintaining Robertson's innocence and said the state lacks proof a crime was even committed. Robertson's attorney telling the jury, "We cannot confidently say Akia Eggleston was killed or died at the hands of another, and there's no trace of Akia." During cross-questioning of witnesses called by the state, the defense pointed out to Akia's roommate that they both talked about wanting to get out of Baltimore. Evidence presented thus far included pictures from inside Akia's home after she disappeared. Witnesses, friends of Akia, testifying they noticed a hole in the wall and furniture missing from her bedroom. Items they say she likely couldn't have moved due to her pregnancy.
There's no way, as it will be proven, that she ran away. So we're going to throw that out the window very shortly, and I look forward to that.
As for Robertson, he sat quietly in court, still with that full beard from his mugshot that we saw, wearing glasses. His attorney declining to comment and said he will likely not be commenting throughout the duration of this trial. The state says in all they have about 25 to 30 witnesses. That questioning will resume tomorrow. Reporting live in downtown Baltimore, Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Well, the code red air quality alert continues for southern Harford County as well as Cecil County this afternoon, and much of the rest of us are under a code orange air quality alert. But for tomorrow, just newly issued a code orange air quality alert for the 95 and 97 corridor. So those folks with sensitive respiratory systems, as well as the very young, the elderly, going to have to spend another day potentially with some extra time inside. Now, the good news out of all this pattern, although we have that low-level air pollution or the lower elevation air pollution where we live here, some low-level ozone that's been kind of causing trouble. The good news is that we do have low humidity, and then we have also had a lot of sunshine. 91 winds out of the southwest at 6 miles an hour. Toyota H&R Harbor Skycam, some of that hazy sun, humidity super low, 34%, dew points only at 59 degrees, meaning the temperature at 91 degrees now, 2 days in a row, and we will make it a heat wave, don't worry. 91 here in Baltimore, 91 at Columbia, 91 at Cockeysville, and 93 at Westminster. It feels a lot like the actual temperature because we do not have that high humidity. That will change tomorrow. It actually feels a little cooler, if you will, than the actual temperature. Feels like 90 here in Baltimore right now. Notice the showers and storms to our north and our northwest. What do you need for those? Well, you need moisture, and it looks like that moisture is going to continue to increase ahead of this next weather maker that's going to give us a risk of some showers and thunderstorms by tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening. For tonight, though, it looks like another overnight where the humidity is not too bad. It's gradually coming up. But temperatures generally in the 70s when you wake up tomorrow morning. Early risers, 5 a.m. Could have some upper 60s in spots. Then we're quickly off to the races temperature-wise. Again, Not much going on until about 2, 3 o'clock. You're starting to see those clouds out west. Look at the showers and thunderstorms around Frederick. Those move toward Westminster as well as Gaithersburg at 4:45. Encompassing the city by about 6:30. Doesn't look severe, but again, we could have some heavy rainers with that extra moisture accruing in the atmosphere here for tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening. So a hot day followed by some PM showers and storms tomorrow. An even better chance on Friday, and then spot showers and storms continue all the way through the weekend into early next week. Guess what? The heat continues with high humidity as well, with highs 90 to 95 pretty much each and every day through next Wednesday.
Jonathan, thanks. Still ahead on Fox 45 News at 5. In the face of bankruptcy, a city now moving in the right direction. Spotlight on America takes us to Detroit. Shows us how leaders were able to turn the tide. And live pictures inside. Baltimore City Council members right now holding a hearing into BGE's contested work to place gas regulators outside of homes. We will have the very latest on testimony that's going on right now.
The director of the FBI grilled on Capitol Hill. I'm Christine Frizzell in Washington with the latest accusations from Republicans and why Democrats say they're harming our national security.
We are back with live pictures from Washington. Some tense moments on Capitol Hill today as the director of the FBI grilled by House lawmakers. Republicans continuing to make the case that the top law enforcement agency has become too politicized and weaponized against Americans. National correspondent Christine Frizzell reports.
The FBI, once again a target of House Republicans. A House Oversight Committee hearing centered largely around claims the Bureau has abused its power time and time again, and that some Americans are taking notice.
And they've seen counterterrorism resources being used against school parents, the homes of conservative political opponents being raided. They've seen conservative states being targeted over their election integrity laws.
Many GOP lawmakers also honing in on a recent ruling, a federal judge finding the federal government violated the First Amendment in making suggestions to social media companies, though the FBI denied its communications were in any way suppressing speech.
When some other intelligence agency gives us information about a foreign intelligence service being behind some account, we will call social media companies' attention to that. But at the end of the day, we're very clear that it's up to the social media companies to decide.
Suggestion of the most powerful law enforcement operation is not a suggestion. It is, in fact, effectively an order.
Meanwhile, Democrats argued the purpose of the hearing was to sow more doubt about the nation's top law enforcement agency, which recently had to open up a new unit to deal with increased threats against FBI personnel.
We are here today because MAGA Republicans will do anything to protect Donald Trump, their savior. Welcome to the legislative arm of the Trump re-election campaign.
Many GOP lawmakers contend the FBI has become weaponized for political reasons, and Americans are noticing.
You preside over the FBI that has the lowest level of trust in the FBI's history. People trusted the FBI more when J. Edgar Hoover was running the place than when you are.
Indeed, a recent Fox News poll showed confidence in the FBI has fallen to 59%, though it's still much lower than for members of Congress, who get just 34%. In Washington, I'm Christine Frizzau.
Still ahead, the legal battle between BGE and city residents continues tonight. The hearing happening right now at City Hall and the hope going forward. Plus, frustrated parents still dealing with the fallout of Maryland's embattled college savings plan. What comes next as account holders search for answers? Plus, a city known for crime and violence seeing trends in the right direction now. We take you to Detroit with a closer look at the methods being used there.
Fox 45 News is following three big stories at 5:30.
More questions about communication failures during the Brooklyn Day mass shooting. How a stop snitching culture in Baltimore could have played a role.
Frustration over the ongoing issues with Maryland's embattled college savings plan. What comes next for parents as tuition deadlines approach?
Plus, the legal battle between BGE and city residents heating up. The city council holding a hearing right at this moment. Let's listen in.
In what they're saying now, I should be angry because BG&E is saying that what they did to my house is dangerous. They're saying they should have done something that was safer, but they didn't do it. So if I'm to believe them, I'm to think that they were.
It's interesting. That gentleman, it looks like, had a gas regulator installed inside of his house, and now BGE is putting on the outside, saying that is safer. So lots of testimony there. We saw Claudia Tolles, who was one of the 3 women arrested. She also was testifying today. And we're going to begin with that. City Council has invited BGE, DPW, and the city's Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation, or CHAP, and other stakeholders to address the controversial external gas regulators.
Fox 45's Amy Simpson joins us live at City Hall as that hearing just got underway. Amy?
Yes, the BGE in the hot seat inside of City Hall right now in front of City Council. This is really the first time we'll hear publicly from BGE as this debate continues over its installation of those external gas regulators across Baltimore. And this comes as the city's Historic Preservation Committee, you've referenced CHAP there, is also in the hot seat over its role in protecting historic homes and neighborhoods here in Baltimore. Now, BGE says the regulators are being moved outdoors to improve safety ahead of its switch to a high-pressure gas system across the city. But that utility work is currently halted by a court injunction. Residents are questioning BGE's message that this is about safety. They fear rate increases and continued constructions on their homes and sidewalks. Some also allege that this utility company is strong-arming residents to agree to the utility work. My colleague Jeff Abel is inside of that hearing right now. He'll have a full report coming up tonight at 10.
And Amy, you've also learned about new plans for council to push back on BGE. What do you know about that?
Yes, Kai, this news coming down just late this afternoon. We've learned that Councilman Zeke Cohen, who represents Fells Point, he's planning to push back on BGE, planning to call on the Public Service Commission to reject BGE's proposal to raise utility rates over a 3-year period. Cohen says he will be introducing a resolution on this coming Monday. We're live outside of City Hall. Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Amy, thank you. Tonight, the Anne Arundel County School Board rejects a policy that would have banned so-called political flags in classrooms, including the Pride flag and Black Lives Matter flag. The final vote came this afternoon after weeks of debate. You can find more on the back and forth on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
Continuing coverage now. A year-long battle between Maryland families and the state's College Trust has come to a close this week. Treasurer Derek Davis, whose office took over this troubled agency last month, announcing he plans to make families whole. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor has the details.
I think the evidence was overwhelming, and I am just grateful that he did the right thing and honored our contracts.
For thousands of Maryland families investing in the state's college savings plan, this letter from Treasurer Derek Davis reestablishing and backdating a 6% earnings rate ends a year-long nightmare. A nightmare that began with an alleged calculation error that quietly froze the interest on all Maryland 529 prepaid accounts, slashing some parents' savings by tens of thousands of dollars.
I've had to tap into my savings. I'm also looking at my retirement funds.
Sleepless nights, lots of sleepless nights.
Initially, Maryland 529 leadership arguing the money appeared in their accounts by mistake and therefore was no longer owed. But parents took their fight to lawmakers.
Frankly, it's disgraceful.
It's a total disaster, obviously.
Who ultimately voted to turn management of the state's college trust over to the treasurer's office. And now, a month into taking the reins, Treasurer Davis releasing a 52-page memo detailing what went wrong and vowing to make families whole. But with fall payments just weeks away, the clock is ticking on another tuition cycle, and many questions remain.
What's the timeline? There's no process yet. There's no claims process yet. So, when is that going to happen?
After the lengthy battle, account holder Lisa Getter says some families are in dire need of funds.
I know he said he's prioritizing 11,000 accounts of kids who are currently in college. But how fast that can be updated.
To ease fears and help get answers fast, Getter is among a small group of parents meeting with Davis in Annapolis this afternoon. They'll be presenting him this list of 15 questions
collected from a Facebook group of more than 1,000 affected families. And not only do they want to know when they'll get their money back, they want to know who will be paying for this mistake.
In my opinion, that was malfeasance, and I would love to see someone held responsible for it.
Responsible for a mistake that cost many Maryland families time, money, and peace of mind.
There are a lot of people who have had significant hardship. There are people who dropped out of school because of this. You know, how do you make that right?
Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Turning to a city in crisis, the investigation is still underway surrounding last weekend's mass shooting at the Brooklyn Day block party. So far, one person has been arrested. A teen is facing gun charges, but not charges for shooting anyone. Right now, some experts we spoke with are pointing to the stop snitching culture being seen in Baltimore.
What do you think's going on? We think about 1,000 people in that area. Somebody had to have seen something. Why aren't we hearing more about suspects and leads?
Number one, I'm not an expert. I do have common sense. Stop snitching is uniquely tied to Baltimore because of the murder of the Dawson family in 2002 and because of the video that went viral after that.
We all remember.
Basically, it says, don't stand up and don't talk. This is a moral issue. People have to make personal choices to come forward, but there's a force that they're aware of that will intimidate them, threaten them, and harm them, and that's real today. So that's why nobody's coming forward.
You can find Megan Gillen's full interview with Pastor P.M. Smith on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
Howard County families are at a race against time to stop their own school system from cutting bus service to roughly 3,500 students.
Last month, Project Baltimore walked with some of those students as young as kindergartners who will now be walking more than a mile along roads with no sidewalks and limited visibility to get to school. Since telling that story, many people expressed their concerns about the busing situation, even starting an online petition. Sean Happel, a Howard County parent, is part of the movement to restore bus service.
So we're asking them just to pause for 1 year, just for 1 year, to get community engagement, to try and make sure that they're considering all aspects before they make such an impactful change to the county.
Tonight on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock, how these families plan to make their voices heard one last time.
Well, nearly a decade after filing for bankruptcy, Detroit is seeing an upward trend.
That's right. In tonight's Spotlight on America, Mackenzie Frost goes to Detroit, Michigan, and explores what's working for the Motor City and how other cities could do the same.
The birthplace of Motown, the heartbeat of the auto industry, Detroit is the city that helped put America on wheels. As cars were coming off the assembly line, the population peaking in the 1950s. The 60s brought racial tensions. Crime surged in the 80s and 90s. Population decline continued into the 2000s.
People were leaving here at the rate of 1,000 a month.
But the city was on the brink of collapse. July 2013, Detroit filing for bankruptcy with some $18 billion in debt. The path forward paved in partnership. It's known as the Grand Bargain, with private, nonprofit, and public leaders coming together. The bargain brought donations from companies and philanthropic groups and pledges from unions to accept reduced benefits. Now a decade after bankruptcy,
Detroit's in a place of hope.
Mayor Mike Duggan says the progress is palpable, going from hearing Detroiters beg for basic city services.
My streetlights aren't on, the ambulance isn't showing up, the police aren't showing up,
to caring about how their community looks.
This is what success looked like.
The downtown corridor is vibrant, getting closer to their goals as the city moves closer